Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race, our common enemy is death. Welcome on Try Something.Vegetarian on YouTube. This is the broadcast. Trump sends 1,500 troops to Iran after declaring Iranian army a terrorist group. True insanity, World War III. So basically I finished my previous broadcast on my channel, that is sending 10,000 troops to Iran. That's another article that I've covered in the previous broadcast, and at the end I covered troops Iran, and now it's clear that they're sending an additional 1,500 US troops to the Middle East, to Iran. So I find it really weird. An additional 1,500 US troops, so how many troops are already there? And why does Iran tolerate these US troops in their country? What if Iran would send some troops to the US? What would happen then? And then we had this, I've covered these remarks of the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, in voice of countries from around the world against Iran. And that statement was later changed. And with catchedpages.com you can find the original post, Twitter, for example, or Facebook remarks that may have been deleted. If their Facebook account is now removed, you can still find it with catchedpages.com. And Donald J. Trump wrote 19th of May, if Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. Well, it looks like they are invading Iran, because if you send troops to Iran, then you're invading that country. You may pretend that that's not the case. Satanic inversion techniques, whatever. But people realize when you're sending troops, then you're invading that country. And when you've said you're going to take their oil, then it's obvious what your goal is. So no blood for cancer oil, universal peace now. Unite against the insanity for universal peace. I already did this, but my cam wasn't on. So I'm going to read the article, and first an intro of text that I still have to select.
Ways to prevent a new Iran sanctions world war. 1. Putin could decide to agree with Trump's new Iran sanctions. 2. Trump could decide not to press ahead with sanctions without the approval of Putin. 3. If there is no valid reason for additional sanctions against Iran, they should not be implemented. What will Trump do if Iranian continues transports of cancer oil? Possible options. 1. Trump attacks Iranian vessels that continue cancer oil exports despite Trump's, according to many, illegal blocking of cancer oil exports sanctions, sparking World War III. 2. Trump allows Iran to transport the cancer oil because of international pressure. World War III over a sunk Iranian vessel is avoided. 3. Trump and Putin make an agreement on the Iranian cancer oil exports. If Russia does not support Iran's cancer oil exports or blocking the Strait of Hormuz, and Rouhani does it anyway without the support of Iran's ally, Russia, a world war cannot take place over this. However, annexation is generally held to be an illegal act. Wiki, annexation. 4. Iran could decide not to transport cancer oil to countries Trump sanctions forbid transporting cancer oil to. Keep your distance to cars in front of you so you don't breathe in fumes of cars in front of you. Petroleum-based gasoline fumes increase your cancer risk considerably. So because oil causes cancer, I call it cancer oil. 2018 Gaza border protests. 183 dead and 9,204 shot, hit by shrapnel, or tear gas canisters, including 6,106 injured by snipers, leading to life-changing wounds in many. Wiki/2018_Gaza_border_protests, Gaza border protests, 190 killed and 28,000 injured in a year of bloodshed. TheGuardian.com. Almost 29,000 Palestinians have been injured since the protests began, and more than 190 killed. Women and children make up more than 1 in 4 of those injured and killed, so it's clear people in Gaza do not have a right to protest.
190 protesters killed in Gaza, so that's different from the yellow vests. And I reported about that as well. So that's unjustifiable, and people should have a right to protest in all countries around the world.
The agency has permitted me to emanate the following intelligence to thee: a world war must be prevented by any means necessary. To prevent a world war over Iran sanctions, 1. Trump is advised not to press ahead with what some would consider illegal sanctions. Iran does not have any nuclear weapon and therefore any sanctions are unjustified. 2. Rooney is advised not to press ahead with transporting cancer oil to countries Trump has forbidden Iran to transport oil to as part of legal or illegal sanctions. 3. Trump is advised to have an agreement with Russian President Putin before taking any action. 4. Putin is advised to prevent any type of retaliation if required to prevent World War III, and create universal peace instead. Is it possible a false flag attack on one of their military vessels is planned, comparable to the sinking of the Lusitania?
So I advise Trump, Rouhani, and Putin to have an agreement before taking any action so that it cannot escalate into a world war. But if they're all controlled by the same Jesuits and Masons, that may be their plan, to build a third temple and reduce the global population to 500 million. Lots of book quotes make clear that some people have this insane idea of reducing the global population. And one theory about it is that it's a technique to round up people for Judgment Day, or people that are willing to help will be judged by a neural network, a scalar weapon, voice of God weapon, if you will, because there is no real God, and the neural network will keep on learning from its mistakes. It's getting smarter and smarter. Oh, speech errors are also made by the thing with synthetic telepathy, as explained in the Malech patent. So humans have a limited neural capacity, but the neural network does not. And because everything is energy, it will become almighty practically at a certain point, but it will never become the creator of heaven and earth, the creator of the Big Bang. And what else did we write recently? So you can all check my previous broadcast as well. Also has some interesting stuff in it. From where should I read this? From here then.
The conspiracy to reduce the global population is a conspiracy fact, clear from the book quotes and $1 Million Georgia Guidestones, not a conspiracy theory. So I don't condone war, they do. Make no mistake about it, they are murdering people, torturing people and funding terrorists. The US and Israeli governments should take a good look at themselves first before judging others. And have a look at the depleted uranium children they have created as well. Donald J. Trump at Real Donald Trump. If Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. PM of Israel at Israeli PM from here. I am going to a meeting with 60 foreign ministers and envoys of countries from around the world against Iran. 11:08-13. February 2019. RT. Almost two-thirds of Americans oppose preemptive U.S. strike on Iran. Fresh poll finds a sizable majority of U.S. citizens oppose the idea of preemptive strikes on Iran, and massively disapprove of Trump's policy towards the Islamic Republic, a survey has revealed. As tensions continue to flare in the Gulf, some 60% of Americans believe that the U.S. should not attack Iranian armed forces first, while a measly 12% supported carrying out a preemptive attack, according to a Tuesday poll by Reuters, Ipsos. That's despite 53% of American adults referring to Iran as a serious or imminent threat. That figure, overlooked by many mainstream media outlets, was almost as large as the number of American adults, 51%, who believe their country is set to go to war against Iran in the next few years. Why we go to war? So, where is the knob on this global thermostat? Is Melania Trump a Russian spy? YouTube. U.S. officials plan may send up to 10,000 troops to MediaStopNews.com. First declaring Iran's army, the IRGC, a terrorist organization equating them to ISIS, and then sending 10,000 troops to Iran? Wouldn't that be true insanity and sure to end in World War III? Unprecedented. Trump designates elite Iranian military force as a terrorist organization. April 8, 2019 edition. CNN.com. Iranian commander who vowed to destroy Israel has been named new leader of IRGC. Ashar al-Assad. Appointment of General Hossein Salami as head of the elite IRGC comes weeks after it was dubbed a terrorist group by U.S. Al Jazeera.com. April 22, 2019. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran include the Army, Artesh, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, Sepah, and the Law Enforcement Force, Nizami Jamhuri Islami Iran, Police. Wiki/enforcement_enforcement_the_Islamic_Republic_Iran.
So what did I want to say? That Trump would need the approval from Congress if he would go to war with Iran. Otherwise it's an illegal war. And here we see costofwar.com. When you type in costofwar.com, you are automatically transferred to nationalpriorities.org, and it shows the costs of the war, the wars, illegal wars in the Middle East, according to some, since 2001. So that's totaling 4.8 trillion since 2001, and a trillion is a million millions, I think. No. Trillion. $1,000 times 1 billion equals 1 trillion. So it's a million millions. That may be correct. This is mathcentral.eurogina.ca. They claim 1,000 times 1 billion equals 1 trillion. Plus about 5,000 dead US soldiers in Iraq, plus the depleted uranium children. That's basically the cost of war. Yet these people continue. So people could also protest and boycott companies that must be boycotted. Perhaps they could boycott Trump also. He also wants to spend $1 trillion on revising the nuclear arsenal instead of controlling all factors that control aging. And if we fail to do so on time, then we're all going to die, and 7.5 billion people will die if they don't get the control of aging in time. Some call it achieving negligible senescence. So let's go to the CNN article, read it anyway, though Trump calls it fake news.
Trump approves additional deployment to Middle East to counter Iran.
We want to have protection.
So we see President Trump speaks as he leaves for Japan. Breaking news, CNN logo, which kind of looks like a CW. Not really CIA. Doesn't really look like CIA. Basically, you could make a stripe here. This Project Mockingbird, so they are basically controlled by the CIA. So that's one of the reasons for my mainstream media blackout subjects top 10 video. More about it, about censorship and fake news, that it's also about what they don't report about. For example, how many people know 37 people died of a GMO, a genetically modified organism contained in a food supplement. Does Trump even know about it?
Trump approves additional deployment to Middle East to counter Iran. May 24, 2019. CNN.
Protection, the Middle East, we're going to be sending a relatively small number of troops, mostly protective, and some very talented people are going to the Middle East right now, and we'll see how, and we'll see what happens.
Mostly protective also indicates that it's not only protective. Could that indicate also offensive?
It'll be about 1,500 people.
What message do you want to send to military families who are concerned about you sending troops to the Middle East?
Well, I think it's going to be very good in the Middle East. Iran has been as you know, they stage terror all over the world. They're a much different country now than when I first got here. When I first got here, they were at 14 different locations fighting. Right now, I don't think Iran wants to fight. And I certainly don't think they want to fight with us. But they cannot have nuclear weapons. And under the Obama horrible agreement, they would have had nuclear weapons within 5 or 6 years. They can't have nuclear weapons, and they understand that.
My father is coming in with dessert. Of course, Iran sent the non-proliferation treaty, so I think they have to allow inspections and such. We're live.
Een groen begin is het halve werk. Dus financier je energiebesparende maatregelen nu mee met de Glorious Verduurzame Hypotheek.
So that's extremely annoying that CNN has this problem of these commercials, and when you click on it, then you're taken to some other website. perhaps I should only use Reuters or something like that. So let's read the article. Sorry about that.
No.
So that's all slowed down. Synthetic telepathy, reality. So electronic voting is an impossibility. They've crashed these planes into the WTC with this technology of Nikola Tesla radiant energy. I've covered the scalar patents in the new CIA document about scalar technology that has been declassified. So you can all check that out, and I just give you the information that counts, you know. I'm not gonna make a polished video. So this is the way you also see it on CNN. So let's read the article. Additional deployments. But I don't want to read the other video things, so like this. Let's go. Let's see if it works.
Washington, CNN President Donald Trump is sending an additional 1,500 U.S. troops to the Middle East as part of a mostly protective effort to deter Iranian threats, he said. Many of the new forces will be engineers to support Patriot missile batteries and reconnaissance aircraft that are being newly deployed, a U.S. official and a source familiar with the plan tells CNN. CNN reported earlier on Friday that Trump has given his approval to Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan to deploy additional military resources to the Middle East to provide further deterrence.
Another technique I use is not buying products that I see in commercials, basically avoiding them.
Against what the Pentagon believes is a rising Iranian threat against U.S. troops in the region. We want to have protection, Trump said, speaking to reporters Friday at the White House. The Middle East, we're going to be sending a relatively small number of troops, mostly protective. Some very talented people are going to the Middle East right now and we'll see what happens. Asked how many troops, he said, it'll be about 1,500 people. I don't think Iran wants to fight, Trump added, and I certainly don't think they want to fight with us. They have actually attacked. Shortly after Trump's remarks, the Pentagon announced that Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps is responsible for attacks on 4 tankers at a port in the United Arab Emirates, Riyadh. Michael Gilday, director of the Joint Chiefs, told reporters at the Pentagon that the Iranians have said publicly they were going to do things. We learned through intelligence reporting they have acted upon those threats and they have actually attacked. The Trump administration has also notified lawmakers that it is using a pre-existing rule that allows it to bypass Congress to expedite arms sales to allies in the region, according to 2 U.S. officials. The administration has formally informed Congress that it is invoking a provision of the Arms Export Control Act to eliminate the statutorily required congressional review of the sales of precision-guided munitions to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and others, according to the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Sen. Bob Menendez. According to Menendez, that notification did not include an explanation as to the administration's legal or practical basis for doing so. The deployment and arms sales signal an intensified push against Tehran that is likely to raise concerns on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers have questioned the administration's threat assessment about Iran and have expressed concern that the U.S. military buildup could lead to an accidental confrontation. Deterrence. Shanahan and other administration officials have said the administration's focus is on deterrence and the protection of U.S. forces in the region. Shanahan acknowledged the dangers of some deployments in a Friday morning address at the U.S. Naval Academy commencement ceremony, saying, "In my capacity, the most difficult decision is authorizing a mission that I know puts the men and women of our armed forces in harm's way. I will continue to give those orders, but only when absolutely necessary. The U.S. has yet to publicly provide any evidence that shows increased Iranian threats. Later Friday, Shanahan said he had notified Congress that he has approved Central Command's request for additional resources in the Middle East for force protection and the threat posed by Iranian forces, including the IRGC and its proxies. The new deployment to deter Iranian threats will include approximately 1,500 U.S. military personnel and consist of a Patriot battalion to defend against missile threats, additional intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, an engineer element to provide force protection improvements throughout the region, and a fighter aircraft squadron to provide additional deterrence and depth to our aviation response options, Shanahan said. Gilday said at about 600 of the 1,500 are part of a Patriot battalion that's going to end up being extended, so the number of deploying personnel is really less than 1,000. Lawmakers emerged from Iran threat briefing split along partisan lines. Lawmakers emerged from Iran threat briefing split along partisan lines. The commander of U.S. Central Command, Gen. Frank McKenzie, is putting a priority on sending defensive capabilities to the region, including the Patriots and intelligence gathering aircraft, according to the U.S. official familiar with the deployment plans. Additional deployments, if needed, could focus on more firepower, such as ships and aircraft, the official said. The deployment, requested by CENTCOM, is seen as an initial step that could be followed with other deployments if needed, the official said. CENTCOM oversees U.S. military operations in the Middle East. A top military priority for now is getting additional Patriot missiles to the region, according to the U.S. official. That system is capable of shooting down ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as aircraft. Drone surveillance. The U.S. military also wants to send military engineers to the region to improve airfield security at bases CENTCOM would like to use. Another strategy will be to try to base some forces at locations out of the range of any potential Iranian missile attack. One such location might be Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, according to some officials. It is not clear if an agreement with the Saudis has been reached. The CENTCOM deployment request also includes both manned and unmanned aircraft for intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance to monitor the movement of Iranian forces, including increased readiness. Pentagon officials have said that military intelligence assessments in several days underscored increased Iranian military readiness along their coastline and the thousands of short and medium-range ballistic and cruise missiles in their inventory that could strike U.S. targets in the region. Those assessments have been questioned by lawmakers, who said after closed-door briefings Tuesday from Shanahan and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo that the threat level from Iran was not unusual. Sen. Chris Murphy, a Connecticut Democrat who sits on the Foreign Relations Committee, said Monday that he was hearing Republicans twist the Iran intel to make it sound like Iran is taking unprovoked, offensive measures against the U.S. and our allies. Iran refuses Trump and number 39's offer of talks unless U.S. shows and number 39 respect and number 39. Iran refuses Trump's offer of talks unless U.S. shows respect. Murphy and other lawmakers argue that Iran's moves are predictable deterrent steps, given the U.S. decision to send warships to the Gulf region a few weeks ago and the Trump administration's ongoing campaign to throttle Iran's economy with sanctions. Adding to confusion about the nature of the threat Iran poses, Trump told reporters on Monday evening that we have no indication that anything's happened or will happen, but if it does, it will be met obviously with great force. Senators from both parties had also criticized the administration after hearing Thursday that the White House was planning to bypass Congress to sell new bombs to allies.
So I'm not finding the 39 basically. And I think that it's programmed deliberately.
What is the 39?
That was read out by the speech engine earlier. Never mind.
In the region, with some calling it an abuse of power and a dangerous precedent. A section of the Arms Control Act allows the White House to waive a traditional 30-day congressional notification period for arms sales if the president declares an emergency, thereby preventing Congress from being able to put a hold on those arms deals. Donald J. Trump. At Real Donald Trump, if Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again. 2:38 10:25 p.m. May 19, 2019. Twitter adds info and privacy. 128 gay people are talking about this. Speaking Thursday, Murphy had said if Trump took such a step, he would be exploiting an obscure loophole in arms control law and the result would be a complete abuse of power. Menendez, a New Jersey Democrat, warned about the precedent the move could set, while Republican Senators Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and Rand Paul of Kentucky said they opposed the idea. The U.S. military strongly believes the increased threat from Iran that emerged earlier this month has not diminished, according to several officials, a contrast to the doubts expressed by lawmakers and the president's characterization of the situation. The U.S. continues to monitor intercepted conversations and messages involving Iranian Quds Force leaders and their proxy forces inside Iraq and Syria. On Friday, the Pentagon said Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps was responsible for attacks on 4 ships in the United Arab Emirates on May 12. Gilday, the director of the Joint Staff, said Friday that the IRGC is responsible for the damage to 4 tankers in the Emirati port of Fujairah and said that a recent rocket attack on the Green Zone in Iraq, where the U.S. Embassy is located, was carried out by Iranian proxies. Gilday did not provide any evidence of Iran's role in the attacks, but cited intelligence. I can't reveal the sources of that reporting except to say with very high confidence we tie the Iranians to those, Gilday said. Administration officials have previously not been as definitive. Asked on May 21 if Iran was behind the tanker attacks, Pompeo said we haven't formed a definitive conclusion, and added it's quite possible. CNN's Jeremy Diamond, Noah Gray and Zachary Cohen contributed to this report. Paid content. This simple trick protects your computer for free. This simple trick protects your computer.
Well, then we can see if there are already responses to this on YouTube, perhaps. Trump sends troops videos. Nobody's coming in. Trump prepares to send troops to border to stop. The 2018 video is the first search result of Google, which is still showing the amount of search results. I thought that YouTube was also showing that. It's not showing the amount of search results anymore, if it ever did that. Anyway, troops Iran then. Trump says he'd send more than 120,000 troops to fight Iran. Fortune, May 14th, 2019. Donald Trump to send 1,500 troops amid Iran stoush. News come out. Trump US to send more troops to the Middle East. Iran news, Al-Jazeera.com, 2 hours ago. So we can read the Al Jazeera article as well. Not choosing sides to get a better overview, but they control all mainstream media, so Jesuits and Masons, and also the Knights of Malta, Bilderberg, Committee of 300, Trilateral Commission, the Round Table, etc. They may all be involved in this plan to reduce the global population. It's an extremely nefarious plan to annihilate 7 billion people in the Third Jesuit World War. to reduce the global population to a more controllable number, 500 million, so they can give them all the same dream and the same experience with the synthetic telepathy machine, with the mind control machine that is described in the Malev patent, the apparatus to remotely monitor and alter brain waves, so they can all see the same miracles and have the same idea about the Messiah. So because there is no real God, there can never be a real Messiah. And let's read this CNN, Al Jazeera article. And perhaps I can edit out the commercial, but if it's no problem, then I can just leave it in there.
Trump, U.S. to send more troops to the Middle East. Trump says troops to be deployed for protective purposes amid rising tensions with Iran, a move Tehran has rejected 2 hours ago. More on Donald Trump. Trump to invoke emergency to sell arms to Saudis. Senators today. Trump doubts need to bolster U.S. troops in Middle East today as Trump heads to Tokyo. Japan's firms brace for trade war impact today. Trump prepared to bypass Congress on Saudi arms sale. Senators today. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he will send about 1,500 additional troops to the Middle East amid heightened tensions with rival Iran. Speaking to
Okay, so they sabotage everything, especially people's brain waves. And we can watch the video. And they subject people to horrible torture with these remote torture weapons. So everybody's silenced and controlled to a certain extent. It's possible that everybody was hypnotized during their sleep, and then they wouldn't remember it if it was done successfully. So a fair trial is impossible. Electronic voting is impossible because Nikola Tesla's radiant energy technology, also called scalar waves, is real. It's not a conspiracy theory. And I would argue it's not a conspiracy fact, though the conspiracy to reduce the global population is a conspiracy fact. And Tesla was a vegetarian inventor who invented it to end all wars, so perhaps he would not have permitted them to use his technology in this manner. I use this method instead of the shortcut keys so that I'm certain that there's audio, because it doesn't always work, and I turned it off for the previous video, so then to do it properly I have to first switch off my mic and then switch on the other thing.
Months ago, we were telling you that we're now hearing from the U.S. that Trump has confirmed that he will be sending an additional 1,500 troops to the Middle East. Let's get more from our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. What are you hearing about this decision, Kimberly?
Well, the U.S. president, we know, was briefed by the acting defense secretary, Patrick Shanahan, as well as his chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford, on Thursday. So we had been anticipating that there may be some announcement on the escalation that has been going on now for some time between the United States and Iran.
So I'm just wondering, how can Iran allow this, basically? Do you have any idea how Iran can allow these troops to be sent? If Iran would send troops to the US, what would the US's reaction be?
Well, I'm not sure whether there's any possibility for Iran to agree or disagree with that move.
Well,
Where would he send the troops?
Is this not an invasion?
Where would he send the troops? That's
I think to Iran.
question.
To Iran, and if to Iran, then it's just an invasion, and then it's another illegal war under false pretense that Iran would be producing a nuclear weapon. And I can show evidence of this because Iran has no nuke.
So it wouldn't be some other surrounding countries that he's sending the troops to?
Well, I can check the CNN article to be absolutely certain.
In the form
I have to push the escape button, I think. Normally on CNN. Oh, this is Al Jazeera, so then I can
Say to Iran.
get out of there with the full screen button. In this one it says Middle East, but the troops are to counter Iran. 1,500 troops along with drones and fighter jets. CNBC 1 hour ago. But yeah, I was wondering that earlier on, where exactly will the troops be deployed? Around Iran, perhaps. None of the additional forces are headed to Iraq or Syria, but all meant for quote defensive purposes, unquote. Pentagon says. US military claims Revolutionary Guards, quote, directly responsible, unquote, for UAE oil tanker attack. So that's not the same as what Trump said then. What the Pentagon says. Intelligence suggests. Well, intelligence confirms, or it's not intelligence. Is certain or anything like that. Its intelligence suggests a quote campaign, unquote, by Iran that ties together threats across the Middle East, including the assessment that Iran's Revolutionary Guards are, quote, directly responsible, unquote, for attacks on oil tankers off the coast of the United Arab Emirates last week. So, what are these threats then across the Middle East? Newest alarm systems. With a key. How suggestive. Well, So that's a good point. So they're going to be sent to the region of Iran. And it's clear they're deploying them in the Middle East. So then we can look at the map of Iran, for example. There we see Iraq, and there is Iran. So Iran is to the east of Iraq. Iran with Tehran and Iraq with Baghdad. And even more to the west we find Jordan and Israel, basically. And you have the Arabian Sea, Qatar, Strait of Hormuz perhaps also. Syria, Turkey, India, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, but for now they're keeping secret the exact location of the troops.
Maybe so they gain time to still make a more definite decision as to where to put the troops.
Yeah, I realized it earlier already that they're not sending them into Iran. I have to let the new situation sink in. US State Department misses deadline to explain whether Iran arms report was slanted. You know the meaning of slanted? Slope or lean in a particular direction, diverge or cause to diverge from the vertical or horizontal, present or view information from a particular angle, especially in a biased or unfair way. Well, I think lots of people think they see these depleted uranium children. Sooner or later, most people run into a picture somewhere and they see these accusations, how they're trying to demonize the Iranian people and pretend that they are the terrorists, etc. So if they would have spread depleted uranium in the US, then they also would have responded. So what do they expect them to do with these illegal wars in the Middle East? Deadline to explain whether Iran arms report was slanted. US State Department missed the deadline. Amid growing tensions with US, Iran says will not surrender, quote, even if bombed, unquote. So that indicates they also see it as an invasion. An attempt to build these permanent bases in these countries in the Middle East that General Wesley Clark already spoke about a long time ago in his video. And now they've invaded all these countries except Iran. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, then I can fill you in a future video, but I think only Iran, that's the only country on his list that they haven't invaded yet. Iran's supreme leader changes his tune on Rouhani and Zarif. I think President Rouhani is spelled with O-U, with an O, but perhaps both spellings are correct. This is Haaretz, haaretz.com, Haaretz, the country in Hebrew, the land, whatever. What some consider the Holy Land of Israel, what the Jewish people consider the holiest place, the Temple Mount, is not the holiest place to the Muslims, who consider Mecca holier, and there's another place that they consider holier, so that makes it to the Muslims the third holiest place. And my proposal would be just give them all a passport, equal rights for everybody living in Israel. No two-state solution, World War peace plan. And in return, they get Temple Mount, and then a world war is avoided. They can build their third temple. Without creating a world war and without reducing the global population to 500 million. That number we also find on the $1 Million Georgia Guidestones, produced by someone under the pseudonym Robert Christian. And in his book, quotes of people that want to reduce the global population. I covered 50 population reduction quotes, and they also call this population control, so it's not always called population reduction. And I think it's illegal to advocate this in violation of the Genocide Convention and the government's task to protect and serve the taxpayers. And I think that all governments are criminal for another reason, but that there should be laws against war. War is always a crime. So what laws are there that make war illegal? Invading other countries especially, is there some kind of universal peace agreement perhaps? Like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, these attempts to dissuade leaders of countries to go to war. Basically, all these countries should unite against any war country that wants to invade other countries, any imperialistic countries. So we've seen this in Vietnam. And in the Second World War, Hitler was pursuing the same idea in principle, a global government, a Neuordnung, Third Reich. Centralization of power, power to the pedo instead of power to the people, power to the peaceful. and the Jesuits are a military order posing as a religious order. More about it in my previous broadcasts. Are we still reading this? Yeah. So let's continue reading then.
Reporters on the White House lawn shortly before departing for a trip to Japan on Friday, Trump said the purpose of this deployment is mostly protective, and is meant to increase the security of forces already in the region. We want to have protection in the Middle East. We're going to be sending a relatively small number of troops, Trump said. Right now, I don't think Iran wants to fight, and I certainly don't think they want to fight with us, he added. The Trump administration had notified Congress earlier on Friday about the troop plans. According to a copy of the notification obtained by the Associated Press news agency, the forces would number roughly 1,500.
So that was what I talked about. So I'm really reviewing this article. Everybody can read it online on the haaretz.com website. Trump says mostly defensive, and the Pentagon says all meant for defensive purposes, according to Haaretz.
And would deploy in the coming weeks, with their primary responsibilities and activities being defensive in nature. At a Pentagon news briefing on Friday, officials said the U.S. plans to send 900 more forces, including engineers and a fighter aircraft squadron, to the Middle East to bolster U.S. defense and extend the deployment of some 600 personnel manning Patriot missiles. Read more. Iran-U.S. tension highlights EU's subordinate role. Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif reiterated his country's rejection of the U.S.'s increase in military deployments to the region while on a visit to Pakistan. Iran will see the end of Trump, but he will never see the end of Iran, Zarif was quoted by state news agency Fars as saying during his trip to the Pakistani capital Islamabad on Friday, before the U.S. announced the troop increase. Zarif held talks with Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and powerful Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa. War is not in anyone's interest and all sides need to make efforts to keep conflict away from the region, General Bajwa said, according to a Pakistani military statement. Earlier this month, the U.S. sent a carrier attack group and bomber task force to the Middle East, citing a credible threat from Tehran. The news came after acting U.S. Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan denied earlier reports that the Trump administration was planning to send as many as 10,000 troops to the region. Shanahan, however, said that sending additional troops was an option they were considering. Highly critical also on Friday, the U.S. military accused Iran's Revolutionary Guards, IRGC, of being directly responsible for attacks on tankers off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, UAE, earlier this month, describing it as part of a campaign by Tehran driving new U.S. deployments. The attack against the shipping in Fujairah we attribute it to the IRGC, said Rear Admiral Michael Gilday, a director of the Joint Staff, adding that the Pentagon attributed limpet mines used in the attack to the IRGC. He declined to describe the means of delivery of the mines. Al Jazeera's Kimberly Halkett, reporting from Washington, said that there are many Democrats who are highly critical of this announcement. Many feel that the National Security Advisor John Bolton in particular has been escalating this, and that there is no imminent threat from Iran, as the administration has been portraying, she said. Tensions between the two countries have soared ever since Trump pulled out of Iran's 2015 nuclear deal with world powers. The U.S. president restored punishing American sanctions on Iran last year and tightened them this month, ordering all countries to halt imports of Iranian oil or face sanctions of their own. Britain, France and Germany, which signed the 2015 deal along with the United States, China and Russia, are determined to show they can compensate for last year's U.S. withdrawal from the deal, protect trade, and still dissuade Tehran from quitting an accord designed to prevent it from developing a nuclear bomb. But Iran's decision earlier this month to backtrack from some of the plan's commitments, in response to U.S. measures to cripple its economy, threatens to unravel the deal, under which Tehran agreed to curbs on its uranium enrichment program in exchange for the removal of most international sanctions. Source: Al Jazeera and news agencies. Donald Trump. Iran, United States, Middle East. Have your say. Give us feedback. Sign up for our newsletter. News: United Kingdom. Theresa May announces resignation amid Brexit chaos. May will step down as Conservative leader on June 7 after weeks of deadlock and chaos surrounding Brexit. May 24, 2019, 15:38 GMT. Theresa May has announced her resignation after weeks of deadlock and chaos surrounding several failed attempts to push her European Union withdrawal agreement through Parliament. On Friday morning, May announced she would step down as Conservative leader on June 7. She will stay on. Amid Iran tensions, Trump announces deployment of 1,500 troops to Middle East. None of the additional forces are headed to Iraq or Syria, but all meant for defensive purposes. Pentagon says U.S. military, Revolutionary Guards directly responsible for UE oil tanker attack. Reuters and Haaretz, May 24, 2019, 8:25 p.m. 1 comments then subscribe now. 290 share on Facebook, tweet send via email, Reddit stumble upon file photo. President Donald Trump, flanked by Acting Defense Secretary Shanahan and Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dunford, during a meeting with military leaders at the White House, April 3, 2019. File photo: President Donald Trump, flanked by Acting Defense Secretary Shanahan and Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dunford, during a meeting with military leaders at the White House, April 3, 2019. Susan Walsh, AP U.S. State Department misses deadline to explain whether Iran arms report was slanted amid growing tensions with U.S. Iran says will not surrender even if bombed. Iran's supreme leader changes his tune on Rouhani and Zarif. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Friday he will send about 1,500 American troops to the Middle East, mostly as a protective measure, amid heightened tensions with Iran. Subscribe for just $1 now. However, the Republican leader played down the potential for military conflict in the region, saying he believed Iran did not want a confrontation with the United States. "We want to have protection in the Middle East. We're going to be sending a relatively small number of troops, mostly protective," Trump said as he left the White House for a trip to Japan. The Pentagon said only about 900 of the 1,500 troops will be newly deploying and that 600 are already in the region and will be extended, adding none of the additional forces are headed to Iraq or Syria, but all meant for defensive purposes.
Wow, that's what I wanted to know. 600 already in the region, plus 1,500, 2,100, 2,100 troops. 2,100 soldiers, many females also nowadays. So we hope nothing happens and that any false flag attacks and such are prevented by people that help to prevent World War III, annihilation of humanity, mutually assured destruction, MAD, and create universal peace.
To counter Iran threat, the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and amphibious assault ship USS Kearsarge sail in the Arabian Sea May 17, 2019. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and amphibious assault ship USS Kearsarge sail in the Arabian Sea May 17, 2019. /handout/Reuters. It also said they include Patriot missile battery personnel, manning for surveillance aircraft and engineers. Also on Friday, Trump, saying there is a national emergency because of tensions with Iran, cleared the sale of billions of dollars worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia and other countries, U.S. senators said, despite strong resistance to the plan from both the Republicans and Democrats. The administration has informed congressional committees that it will go ahead with 22 arms deals worth some $8 billion, congressional aides said, sweeping aside a long-standing precedent for congressional review of such sales. The U.S. military said intelligence suggests a campaign by Iran that ties together threats across the Middle East, including the assessment that Iran's Revolutionary Guards are directly responsible for attacks on oil tankers off the coast of the United Arab Emirates last week. The war between the US and Iran has begun, in case you didn't notice. Opinion: right now, I don't think Iran wants to fight, and I certainly don't think they want to fight with us, Trump said, but they cannot have nuclear weapons, he continued. They can't have nuclear weapons, and they understand that. Russian lawmaker Vladimir Herberov, deputy head of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, said on Friday that his country could raise the new U.S. deployment at the UN Security Council, RIA news agency reported. U.S. officials told the Associated Press members of Congress were notified following a White House meeting Thursday to discuss Pentagon proposals to bolster the U.S. force presence in the Middle East. The forces would help strengthen U.S. defenses in the region, two sources told Reuters earlier on condition of anonymity. They said the forces included engineers. Earlier this week, officials had said that Pentagon planners had outlined plans that could have sent up to 10,000 military reinforcements to the region. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan later said planners hadn't settled on a figure. The U.S. began reinforcing its presence in the Persian Gulf region this month in response to what it said was a threat from Iran. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said on Thursday his country will not surrender to U.S. pressure and will not abandon its goals even if it is bombed, stepping up the war of words between the Islamic Republic and the United States. Earlier on Thursday, Iran's top military chief said the standoff between Tehran and Washington was a clash of wills, warning that any enemy adventurism would meet a crushing response. The semi-official Fars news agency reported. Stay up to date. Sign up to our newsletter. Email sign up. Tensions have ratcheted up recently in the Mideast as the White House earlier this month sent an aircraft carrier and B-52 bombers to the region over a still unexplained threat it perceived from Iran. And on Thursday, the Pentagon outlined proposals to the White House to send military reinforcements to the Middle East to beef up defenses against Iran, after pulling out of Iran's 2015 nuclear deal with world powers. Trump restored U.S. sanctions on Iran last year and tightened them this month, ordering all countries to halt imports of Iranian oil or face sanctions of their own. More than 1 year after the imposition of these severe sanctions, our people have not bowed to pressures despite facing difficulties in their lives, Rouhani was quoted by the state news agency IRNA as saying. As tensions rise between U.S. and Iran, each side is waiting for the other to blink. Analysis. Addressing a ceremony in commemoration of the 1988 Iran-Iraq War, he added, "We need resistance, so our enemies know that if they bomb our land, and if our children are martyred, wounded or taken as prisoners, we will not give up on our goals for the independence of our country and our pride." Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister lashed out at President Trump on Friday during a critically timed visit to Pakistan. The remarks by Mohammad Javad Zarif were the latest in a war of words between him and Trump. The Iranian diplomat on Friday assailed the American president for his tweet earlier this week warning Iran not to threaten the U.S. again or it would face its official end. Iran will see the end of Trump, but he will never see the end of Iran, Zarif was quoted by Iran's semi-official Fars news agency as saying during a visit to Islamabad. The purpose of Zarif's visit to Pakistan, where he held talks with his Pakistani counterpart Shah Mahmood Qureshi and also Prime Minister Imran Khan, was not made public. Iran's Mideast proxies pledge it will never fight alone. Here's a look at who they are, explained. But there has been speculation that Iran is looking to Islamabad and its close relationship with Riyadh to help de-escalate the situation. Ahead of Zarif's arrival, Pakistan's foreign ministry called on all sides to show restraint, as any miscalculated move can transmute into a large-scale conflict. Zarif has been criticized this week by Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who named him and President Rouhani as failing to implement the leader's orders over Iran's 2015 nuclear deal with world powers. Khamenei had claimed the deal had numerous ambiguities and structural weaknesses that could damage Iran. Separately, the official Iranian news agency IRNA quoted Zarif in Islamabad as warning of anarchy if world powers don't unite to stop what he called U.S. aggression. Iran's official parlance for Washington's pressure on Tehran, Khamenei's criticism of Zarif signaled a hardline tilt in how the Islamic Republic will react going forward amid Trump's maximalist pressure campaign. Iran declared earlier this month that the remaining signatories to the deal, Germany, France, Britain, China and Russia, have 2 months to develop a plan to shield Iran from American sanctions. On Monday, Iran announced it had quadrupled its production capacity of low-enriched uranium, making it likely that Tehran will soon exceed the stockpile limitations set by the nuclear accord, which would escalate the situation further. Several incidents have added to the crisis. On Thursday, Saudi Arabia said Yemen's Iran-aligned rebels again targeted an airport near its southern border with a bomb-carrying drone.
So I've turned on the live chat, apparently that was switched off by default, and also the video VCR mode thing that's in stream options, enable DVR, so that viewers can seek back up to 12 hours needs to be turned on. So those are two things to turn on when you make your own stream. Alright, so I was wondering how to get the chat into Open Broadcaster software. But of course I can check that some other time. This isn't my best broadcast because I'm doing other things in the meantime. And my father has fallen asleep, so this one's quite boring, but previous broadcasts are better. And still, it has the interesting information about the 600 troops already being present. To send 900 more, or then total 1500. Well, they're all talking about 1500, sending 1500. Trump is sending an additional 1500 US troops. So then, how can Al Jazeera be correct when they're all writing that? So, question every source of information, test everything you learn. But okay, we get the idea, sending troops. Is that a good sign when it comes to universal peace, or is it a bad sign? There's an excellent article that it would have covered were it not for YouTube censorship. So I'm not going to mention the name of the website or cover the article. So I'd have to think about all this. So what do you think about this sending of 1500 troops to the Middle East?
Well, it could have good results.
And we were also listening to the Al Jazeera broadcast. Perhaps it's better if I restart that. What did you say, sorry? About the 1500 troops?
It could have good results.
It could have good results.
Yeah.
Like what results? For example?
now Iran trying more to watch out for American interests and preferences.
What will the IRGC do, and what will the US do when they run into the IRGC, when they run into each other, basically? When Trump has declared them a terrorist group a la ISIS, basically. Well, it would be best if they both don't do anything to avoid escalation to world war. And the US invested more than all the other countries combined in the bloody war machine, so I'm just about preventing world war. I've given advice to all these leaders how to prevent that world war. But if they're also being extorted with remote torture weapons, then they can do surprising things that are not what the majority of the population would want them to do. And then it's simply best to be prepared with that radiological water filter and storable food. But let's listen to the Al Jazeera video.
Has confirmed that he will be sending an additional 1,500 troops to the Middle East. Let's get more from our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halk. What are you hearing about this decision, Kimberly?
Well, the U.S. president, we know, was briefed by the acting defense secretary, Patrick Shanahan, as well as his chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford, on Thursday. So we had been anticipating that there may be some announcement on the escalation that has been going on now for some time between the United States and Iran in the form of the United States sending troops. We now know, and the president has confirmed just moments ago, is on the lawn of the White House where he is set to depart, that he has made that decision to send at least 1,500 troops, military resources to the Gulf, to, in his words, and that of some of the Pentagon officials that we have been trying to reach out to, that this is to deter Iranian threats. Now, in terms of what this will look like, because it's obviously a very small number, we know that this may be in the form of personnel to man Patriot missile batteries. This could also be used, these numbers, in terms of intel collection, so reconnaissance aircraft, for example. Now, once again, this comes just less than 24 hours after the president was asked about potential troop deployments here at the White House, and he said, I don't think we're going to need them. We also heard from the acting defense secretary this week that the threat from Iran in the eyes of the United States had essentially been put on hold. So to now have this announcement is certainly going to concern many lawmakers who feel that while the United States continues to say, and this administration continues to say, this is in response to some sort of threat, that this could be viewed by Iran as some sort of provocation.
And how much support does this decision have amongst lawmakers and others in the White House?
Well, certainly there are many Democrats on Capitol Hill who are highly critical of and will be highly critical of this announcement, that feel that the National Security Advisor, John Bolton in particular, has been escalating this, and that there is no imminent threat as the administration has been portraying. We do know that John Bolton has in the past advocated for preemptive strikes, not just on Iran, but also on North Korea. We do know that another advisor that weighs in heavily in Donald Trump's decision-making is his U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who has also continued to maintain that there is an increased threat, even as other members of the administration have efforted to tamp down those types of statements. So there have been briefings on Capitol Hill this week, and I can tell you there's a lot of skepticism, particularly from Democrats in the House of Representatives. And we should also remind our viewers that while the Congress in the United States legally is the one that can only authorize war, there is concern that this administration may use a loophole.
So I think that is an insane idea, preemptive strikes. So I have an agreement with President Putin, about, because I don't accept electronic voting results. I don't know if he was supposedly voted into office with an electronic voting machine of George Soros, but I don't believe in electronic voting, so I wouldn't accept him as president. Having said that, there must be an agreement if they want to avoid a world war, mutually assured destruction, and it's possible that everyone without a Tesla plasma shield would die, so if you don't have one, prevent a world war. We're surrounded with weapons of mass destruction, weapons of self-destruction, as Robin Williams called them, before he died. Anyway, let's listen to the rest of the broadcast. And even then, I'm against the slaughter of innocent civilians in illegal wars and the depleted uranium war crime. And it's a crying shame that the American taxpayer paid for that instead of controlling these factors that control aging. Almost 2 people die every second in this world, in reality.
That was put in place after the September 11th attacks to get around any sort of congressional oversight or approval if this were to escalate further.
And will this be seen, Kimberly, as an escalation of the strange relationship and tensions between Iran and the United States?
Well,
I would like to add to my previous statement that I'm very pleased to see that so many Americans do not support a preemptive strike on Iran. About 12% of the Americans support it, so at least that's something.
I think that, those in the region could probably give a better sense of how this will be reacted to, but certainly there is always concern when the United States continues to say that this is purely defensive and then points to Iran as sort of increasing its posture, perhaps in response to the U.S. actions, and then points to that and says this is escalatory behavior. You have to wonder which came first, and many people would argue that it's the United States that is provoking this, not the other way around. So in terms of the actions, that certainly is a subjective perspective, perhaps some would argue, but at the same time, when you look at these numbers, they're relatively small. I mean, we've been hearing numbers for a while now that have ranged up to 120,000, and many thought that that was also inadequate should there be some sort of military confrontation. So perhaps the smaller number will be seen as the deterrence that the United States claims it is. It's still unclear. We will have to now watch for reaction from Iran and the surrounding region and those that support Iran to find out how this might be interpreted. But I can tell you, as of in the last few moments, the U.S. president has confirmed as the U.S. Commander-in-Chief of military forces that he is in fact deploying 1,500 troops in response to what the United States believes is escalation by Iran.
Okay, Kimberly, yes, and we will be waiting to see if we get any reaction from Iran as well as others in the region. For the time being, Kimberly, thank you for that from Washington.
Kimberly Halkett of CNN reporting, of Al Jazeera. I'm still thinking I'm watching CNN. Excusez-moi. U.S. President. I was going to check if there's anything about Patriots. You mentioned Patriot battalions or something. 600 personnel manning Patriot missiles. Oh, they're manned. Let's read. Is this even the same thing, I wonder? The MM-104 Patriot.
The MM-104 Patriot is a surface-to-air missile, SAM, system, the primary of its kind used by the United States Army and several allied nations. It is manufactured by the U.S. defense contractor Raytheon and derives its name from the radar component of the weapon system, the N/MPQ-53. At the heart of the system is known as the phased array tracking radar to intercept on.
So it's just cancer radar, cancer cell phone radiation. It's nothing advanced like scalar technology or radiant energy of Nikola Tesla.
Target, which is a backronym for Patriot.
So basically, the Dr. Bernard Eastland Harp patent may give more insight into what other systems they have for missile defense, missile shields. I've covered that in my previous broadcast on this channel. Try Something.Vegetarian on YouTube.
The Patriot system replaced the Nike Hercules system as the U.S. Army's primary high-to-medium air defense (HMAD) system, and replaced the M23 Hawk system as the U.S. Army's medium tactical air defense system. In addition to these roles, Patriot has been given the function of the U.S. Army's anti-ballistic missile (ABM) system, which is now Patriot's primary mission. The system is expected to stay fielded until at least 2040.
Well, looking at the official narrative, of course, if you're deploying missile defense systems, etc., you could argue that's a defensive measure and nobody could have anything against that. Saving lives, preventing bleeds, curing, etc. So these were used in the Iraq War as well. So they're not invading just yet. Go back to the news. We can also reload the page to get some newer articles and read this to make a selection or move to get more ideas about this, what else is online that I could cover in relation to this.
U.S. sends 1,500 troops to Mideast after citing Iran for attacks. Bloomberg. 1 hour ago, President Donald Trump ordered more troops to the Middle East as the Pentagon blamed Tehran for recent attacks in the region. Yet the small U.S. to send 1,500 extra troops to Middle East amid tensions. BBC News. 2 hours ago, Pentagon will send 1,500 troops, along with drones and fighter jets to CNBC. 4 hours ago, Trump approves additional deployment to Mideast to counter Iran. In depth. CNN. 6 hours ago, federal judge blocks strict abortion law in Mississippi. Live updates. Live updating The Guardian. 4 hours ago, Trump approves sending more forces to the Middle East amid tensions. In-depth Washington Post 3 hours ago. View all story image for troops Iran from Vox. The Pentagon's plan to send up to 10,000 troops to the Middle East is Vox, May 23, 2019. The United States might ratchet up tensions with Iran by sending thousands of troops to the Middle East, a sign that the Trump administration, Trump doubts need to bolster U.S. troops in Middle East. Al-Jazeera.com 14 hours ago. More troops, defensive capabilities requested to Middle East to deter. International ABC News, May 23, 2019. Pentagon asks Trump to send several thousand more troops to. In-depth Los Angeles Times 22 hours ago. Trump defense chief, U.S. may send more troops to Middle East amid. International The Hill, May 23, 2019.
Along with drones and fighter jets. So some things might be best not to mention, just thinking. I can turn on the nice picture show for you all. So I really want to help prevent a world war, and any ideas are welcome. Skype Prologic999 or leave a comment. So if these people have planned to annihilate you all, they want to survive it themselves, that's for sure. And I think one of the key ways is having an agreement with Putin, Iran's ally, before taking any action that could possibly trigger a third Jesuit world war. And also being ready to stop that war by taking over if necessary. If that's still possible, überhaupt, with the remote torture weapons, it's possible. These people are invincible. They'll be hiding in underground cities, but my point that I wanted to make is that they will want to survive it themselves. And it is possible that they've decided to let 20% of these nukes through, basically, and then that would be a worldwide event and people would not be able to survive it without that radiological water filter, which took about 2 weeks and 2 days to arrive from the US, ordered on eBay. So that's pretty fast. Of course, you can't be 100% certain that it will arrive on time or that it will arrive at all, but you have at least the money back guarantee if eBay is not nuked by then. But I've seen these blast craters, or these pictures of blast craters, of course they can also be fake. So I have an open mind, and I think it is weird that bananas are also radioactive, but you can eat them basically. and I need to study it more. But I think the depleted uranium children make clear that they do cause horrible birth defects. Depleted uranium shelves and the blast craters make clear that they have some kind of tremendously powerful explosive. So preventing beats curing. Because of the normalcy bias, lots of people think that it's not gonna happen, it will never happen, and it can't happen. Perhaps it's good, perhaps if we had all believed them, then it didn't happen. But others say it's only a matter of time before it happens, and these nukes cannot save anyone, they can't save lives, they can only annihilate millions, billions of people and animals, which are often left out of the thought process. These wonderful little birds and cats and dogs, etc. Pets, sometimes they're loved more than their fellow humans. Also, lots of children would die. Young boys and girls. They'd vomit of the radiation poisoning. And after a while they'd die. People need water very regularly, so I just make it clear in as many broadcasts and as many chats as possible, hoping to save the maximum number of human lives. Pikuach nefesh, for example. You may break any commandment to save a human life except 3 cardinal sins, and we all know what those are, don't we? So you may break any commandment to save a human life. Well, I agree with you may not murder to save another life. But execution is not murder, so if you're executing a murderer, then you're not a murderer yourself. And idolatry and sexual crimes, I can talk about that. And sometimes I think they should be permitted to save a human life, but that's just not gonna be a question that I'd ask the rabbi. So yeah, some weapons, that's a good idea as well, to defend yourself and your family. You say now, are you responding to something I say?
Don't you remember what you asked me?
I didn't ask you anything, I said it's a good...
To defend myself and family.
Yeah, you think it's not a good idea to have weapons to defend yourself and your loved ones, your family?
It's a good idea to have them available. Depends on the situation.
To have
Threat.
protection.
And the sources of the threat.
Well, all I know is they're supposed to protect us with the scalar technology, and the US citizens have taken an oath to protect the US against any enemies, foreign and domestic. So that includes people that want to just get rid of the US, who impose their satanic Luciferian totalitarian global government. So it literally says the US, doesn't it? It doesn't say the people, protect the people against any enemies, foreign domestic or whatever. Anyway, you can Google it, of course. Let's do the other picture show. So this is basically the end of the broadcast. The book publisher, religious branch of the United Nations, Lucis Trust, former Lucifer Book Publishing Company, and they used to be located at 666, and now they moved to another address. It's all covered in my previous broadcasts as well. So if they are Freemasons, they may not have any plans to arrest people that are guilty of the depleted uranium war crime, though they might claim it as one. I got all Monsanto companies. I was just gonna turn on the Windows spotlight. Today it was a warmer day in the Netherlands, finally. Today was pleasant. So Vox also reported about the Pentagon's plan to send up to 10,000 troops to the Middle East. Perhaps it was their plan at first and then it got reduced because otherwise they might start suspecting something or something. Perhaps some really simple ideas behind it. So is it going to be an Iran sanction world war, an ISIS world war, Third Temple world war, a legal Iran sanction world war, false flag type event a la the sinking of the Lusitania? Four types possible world wars, or will there not be a world war? Let us know in the comments what you think, and if possible also why you think that, but it's not a must, just what you think there will or there will not be a world war, and how they create it if that would come to pass. And what would be safe countries? Of course, if it's a nuclear type event, then there might not be a safe country. Also, you're not safe at sea. And if lots of nukes would reach their targets, there would be a 7-year nuclear winter, colder than the next ice age, according to the documentary that I've watched. So I've spent a lot of time on this already, of course. Doesn't mean that I can make crucial mistakes like thinking they're going to invade Iran instead of send troops to the Middle East. I don't know where I got that. Perhaps it's visible in my previous broadcast. But it's clear it's about Iran, so these troops are sent to that region surrounding Iran and probably the Arabian Sea and the Strait of Hormuz, etc. But perhaps they already have an agenda, a scenario of what they're gonna do if all these leaders are controlled. And their plan is building that third temple and ruling the world from Jerusalem. But okay, book by Ingersoll Lockwood, 1900 or Last President, and Baron Trump's marvelous underground journey, written in 1893, are not enough to convince me that there will be a third Jesuit World War. But I can't think of any good reason not to be prepared, especially if you're in a civilized country. But yeah, people are gonna need a blast shelter if they're in a large city, near airports. Especially airports can be targets. And the Russians have these megaton nukes, etc. So even if they're dropped on Amsterdam, they would reach Meidrecht. It has to do with the radius and things like that. So what I show on that homemade map is the radius of the missile range, and not the range of the explosion or the yield or anything like that. And I don't know, I think there is no such map on the internet. It's weird though, because all the ranges of these missiles are known, so people could easily make a map that shows all the missiles and what countries they could reach in the event they would be fired, which could be done automatically without any human decision. So basically our fate is decided by a computer. If that's true about the DEFCON system, then I'm against it. I think that it may not be left up to a computer that can get errors and that has a fan that needs to be vacuumed regularly so it doesn't overheat and things like that. But that's what I've heard, retaliation would be automatic. No human decision would be involved. So I've already said that it would only kill millions of civilians, innocent civilians on the other side. It wouldn't kill the people that have started the war and that have done these attacks on innocent civilians. So you could argue they're cowards, they're dishonorable people. And they're mass murderers if they would do such a thing. If they would attack first, etc. Trigger world war. So ceasefire, things like that. Talking about universal peace as well. So you give people a choice. Perhaps there's some top leader listening to this broadcast and they might think, World War, well, it's the only option, let's go. Preempt first, kill them before they kill us all. And then we're all dead because of mutually assured destruction, so that's no option that I would consider. And anybody that would have to be shot if they could set off these nukes and they plan to do so, and I'm for preventing that by any means necessary. Most of our fellow humans are not murderers, they're people with families, with pets and children, etc. And many people have loved ones and they don't want them to die. Even if they'd want to die themselves, usually they hope the rest has a long, happy life, if they're really loved ones. People that haven't been attacked with these scalar weapons might not realize the potential to harm humanity with these things, but thousands of targeted individuals know what I'm talking about, and they know these things are real. So yeah, thinking about what can be done to prevent it and actually do it. Some people would even do it if it would cost them their own life to save the people of planet Earth. But okay, that's only... I'm not saying that they have planned a world war, basically, is what I'm saying now. I have said that they've possibly planned a world war, but it's clear some people want to reduce the global population to 500 million with the book quote and Georgia Guidestones. That's all true, that's a conspiracy fact. But if these people would have been the people that control the button, then it would have happened already, wouldn't it? And perhaps there is no button if the people that think that nuclear weapons are a hoax are right. But okay, with the scalar weapons they can also create ionizing radiation. Ionizing and non-ionizing radiation means nuclear radiation, so they can make it look like a nuke went off, basically. They can also make nuclear-sized explosions. It's another patent. And perhaps most of us think there is no use in this. We must create a perfect society in which we all will live happily eternally and work towards that, not towards self-annihilation. That's the stupidest thing we can do. One, because we're not overpopulated, and two, because you can fight overpopulation with education. People with an education have a lower birth rate. So there can be legal ways to control the population. And nobody has been able to explain to me why these people that advocate population reduction haven't been arrested yet. Nobody. a clear lake.
Where is it?
Oh, perhaps Switzerland or something. It's pretty good.
Between Switzerland and Iran and Austria.
Austria, perhaps, I don't know. Aurora Borealis, Grand Canyon or something. Or is that where the aliens have landed? Oh. Nice. The reflection in the water looks very clear. That's pretty hypnotic. Universal peace now. Like you're near the echo. Please continue. Okay.
Continue. Oh, you have put the oil here. I didn't see that for a long time.
No, I see it more like these military can only kill tons of people. Guns cannot save lives either. And neither can drones and fighter jets, etc. Bombing planes. Yet I think we can't say, well, this means they're gonna attack Iran. That may very well be their plan, but how they're going to set this up. If we know that, then we would also know how to prevent that, of course. Stalling is another technique, I guess. Not following illegal orders. Covering your tracks, evidence, etc. Yes, well, I think that a confrontation between the IRGC and the US military vessels and such has to be prevented. An agreement with Putin must be made. Agreement must be reached to prevent a world war. And to create universal peace, of course. Friday night, lots of people in the discotheques, dancing, buying the expensive killer alcohol, cancer-causing killer alcohol, narrowing down the consciousnesses. But having a good time nonetheless. So do you have any more thoughts about sending of troops to Iran?
No.
Fox writes it's the Pentagon's plan. the same Pentagon that had the plan to nuke the zombie hordes. That's a CNN article about CONOP 88, Plan 88, CNN calls it, I think. And at the bottom of the CNN article you can see that their plan was to nuke the zombie hordes, because if you inject people with a rabies-based Ebola vaccine and they start foaming at the mouth, then you could argue that they're zombies, basically. And they'd use that because it's far deadlier than Ebola, which is more viral. And there's no good argument for these rush-through killer vaccines, because the SDRA of the DoD, Strategic Threat Reduction Agency, has tested colloidal silver effective in killing the Ebola virus. And the second reason is that the Ebola virus mutates, so the virus in the killer vaccines can never be the same as the mutated Ebola. So they have no good argument to use vaccines in this case. What was it you want to say?
I wanted to say that I don't know if Iran is a full member of the United Nations, and that could mean that these two countries, the United States and Iran, should manage their relationship on the basis of the rules they agreed to by being members of the United Nations. And if they don't follow the rules, then the United Nations could become active in making trying to prevent them from working without the rules.
Iran is a current member state, and there are 193 sovereign states that are members of the United Nations.
It's not an answer to my question.
No, I didn't really listen to your question, what you were saying.
You asked for it.
Yes.
So I told you.
Yes, but I was looking if Iran is a UN member state, and they are, so I didn't really listen very well to the rest of the things you were saying, but perhaps you could put it in one sentence, because I'd like to know, and I could listen to the video because it's in this broadcast, but...
Well, I would say that if they're both members of the United Nations, any violations they permit themselves or each other of the rules that they agreed to by becoming members of the United Nations, they would have to face
the consequences
and the results of violating the rules. According to the rules, what has to be done, could be done to make them improve their behavior.
Well, I wonder if the United Nations could be privileged if they are And how controlled they are by Freemasons also. You can look at how they've handled the invasion of Iraq, etc. Or even the role in it, perhaps. So I wouldn't expect too much goodness from their side either. Though of course it's a large group of people and they might do the right thing for their own future as well. I mean, it's not proven, they're all clinically insane just yet. But okay, you can seriously wonder, of course, if the human race fails to rid themselves of weapons of self-destruction, fails to dismantle these nuclear weapons even, if the human race as a whole could be considered sane. But okay, most people don't have nukes, and many people are against nukes and they've protested against them, etc. So you could argue the producers are responsible and leaders and people who have acquired them are. In the Netherlands they have a saying, the polluter pays. So if they make it dirty, they also have to clean it up. Go nuclear, waste, etc. So I think if you all were behind the button and we'd vote about it democratically, most people would not choose the option of self-annihilation. But that's not the way it works in reality.
Option of self-annihilation? What is that?
With the dictatorial EU, UN. What are you saying? Option of self-annihilation, yeah, that's an option, of course.
Yeah, what does it mean? Self-annihilation.
Well, what do you think it means? Thermonuclear warfare. The only way to win the game of thermonuclear warfare is ... not to play war games with Matthew Broderick. The movie. With the Falcon and everything.
Okay, there could be a violent alternative and a peaceful alternative. To implement the self-annihilation principle.
Peaceful alternative to implement self-annihilation?
Yeah.
Oh, a peaceful alternative to that, you mean?
A peaceful way to do it.
A peaceful way to self-annihilate?
Yes.
Well, how about the opposite, making everybody eternal, peaceful way to create a perfect society in which we all will live happily eternally? And could it be true that if they create a world war, they'd cut themselves off from that for the rest of eternity? But okay, I think you can't leave out scalar weapons that have made nuclear weapons obsolete when you're talking about this subject. But you could also argue there is no peaceful way to self-annihilate. It would also be, because it would be war, basically. You mean perhaps a humane way? Well, I don't know how they've, and if they've tested it, but I think I wouldn't like to be frozen either. Though supposedly death would be instant and the bodies would not start to rot, because all the bacteria are killed by the tremendously low temperature in exothermic mode, according to former Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden, of the scalar weapons. And then I'm talking about Tesla's death ray, which may have made nukes obsolete from even before their inception, before they were created, before the first atomic tests. 40 years before that, Tesla already had his death ray, the radiant energy technology, to end all wars. Unquote. Vegetarian Nikola Tesla is of course a famous inventor, genius that created many electronic devices that people are using nowadays. And some of them may have been kept more secret. So then you can also wonder about how many people, if there are 15 scalar weapon countries, could they control them all? Or is that impossible? If you have a more powerful scalar weapon, could that destroy the Tesla plasma shield of all the others? Could it destroy all the other scalar weapons? Also, if it has a more advanced computer, or if several of them would unite against that one scalar weapon, etc., could they withstand, could they fight back, so to speak? What would happen? So you have the Tesla plasma shield, and then you have a scalar wave. And the power of the shield might be bigger than the scalar wave. But basically, to save the lives of the civilians, would have to disable or sabotage or destroy their scalar weapon. All weapons of self-destruction should be sabotaged, you could argue. And Right, let's do that then. Where all the human race, our common enemy is death, so you could argue there is no enemy. Our only enemy is death. The real enemy. Not unbeatable because everything is energy, I claim. So the scratching is good for circulation. Thank you very much, it was very enjoyable, so now I'm ready to scratch you. So I was talking about that basically the mutually assured destruction doctrine is still applicable also with the scalar weapons, and that perhaps nobody knows if even if these scalar weapons are real, if they're top secret technology and they can remotely torture and kill people with it, and they have through the wall radar, they see us in 3D or wherever they want to see, then they are practically invincible, and the potential for abuse is enormous. Power corrupts, they say, and then humanity as a whole should unite to prevent the abuse of this relatively new technology. Synthetic telepathy, machine remote neural monitoring is described in the Malech patent and the Dr. Bernard Eastland Harp patent. Makes clear what these ionospheric heaters are capable of, geoengineering, etc., modifying the jet stream, flooding Iran, etc. So I would say they're targeting Iran, basically. That's perhaps I've had that thought subconsciously all the time, but I didn't grasp it yet, or something like that. And that's also clear from the sanctions, which many argue are unjustified, if not illegal. I don't know, I could Google. But what they say doesn't matter, we can make up our own minds, basically. So how to create universal peace instead. So I think they're not going for the one-state solution, that the goal may be population reduction to 500 million, and it's the Jesuits and Masons, according to Citizens Action Network. All intelligence agencies are Masonic and controlled by the Jesuits, and they do that from behind the scenes. Eric John Phelps also controlled the position according to sources online, and control the position may have more interesting information and facts that may also be mixed with lies, so that's why some people might avoid it. But if you want to know the truth about certain matters, you could argue you have to find out all you can about a particular subject from several people from both sides, so to speak, to be an unbiased reporter that saves humanity. And I think my previous broadcasts have had an influence, that they have had 70 views or more, etc. And if there's one leader that has viewed them and is influenced by it in a positive way, then perhaps a world war has already been avoided. So a nice summer without nukes hitting us, etc., without global thermonuclear Armageddon, I think it would be nicer. Than being contaminated and annihilated with scalar weapons. Am I missing something? What do you think? Is it an insane idea, or what are your thoughts on this, if any?
Well, one of the thoughts I have on this is it appears that the mainstream press does not pay any attention to these questions.
Right, that's a good point. I did a broadcast about 10 mainstream media blackout subjects, top 10. And scalar weapons and weather engineering. Geoengineering, they call it, is practically left out completely, though. It's Project Cloverleaf, it's cloud seeding, cancer chemtrail patents are online, CIA's evergreen aviation. And then they want to pretend to contrail planes and that they're for ballast in the plane, etc. All kinds of nonsense. So question every source of information and mistrust authority, because some people have been killed for questioning authority. And test everything you learn. And before 1993, when Project Cloverleaf started, there were no long white lines in the sky. On pictures and videos we see that, so that's how we know they are not contrails, they're not condensation trails or vapors. They are cancer chemtrails, cancer-causing barium, used for cloud seeding, weather manipulation, to flood Iran, for example. But this is, of course, slander and allegation, you could argue. Unless I say it's just a theory. Or, well, I don't know if people have already proven it online, that's possible, so I don't know if it's just a theory. I'm just pondering on, it is kind of a coincidence that we saw these floods in Iran recently, basically. Not in any other country.
Floods in Iran?
Yeah. You haven't heard about it?
I have not.
You haven't even heard about it, you see.
No.
I've covered it in one of my previous broadcasts. If you're interested, on my channel, try Something.Vegetarian on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting website, maybe Anti-War. Assange faces 170 years as US adds charges. Now the Swedish arrest warrant for Assange. Daniel Ellsberg on Julian Assange's espionage charges. Trump 1,500 more US troops going to Mid-East. Pentagon officials say no actual plan exists for Iran war. Well, basically, if they take their orders from Superior General of the Jesuits, then Arturo Sosa is their leader, and who else could have possible world war plans? Bilderberg, Skull and Bones, Netanyahu, perhaps, Third Temple, or Trump. There are videos about him preparing the third temple thing for 35 years or something. I've covered it all in my previous broadcast, but we could review if they have anything different or to add to the 1,500 troops being sent to the Middle East. So that's a good question also, because they don't write where they are sending them exactly. The area around Iran or something, the Middle East as a whole, it's pretty big, I guess. You would see the continent. Here we can see location of the Middle East. So that basically includes Egypt, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel, Turkey also. So the Black Sea is over here. What's this one? It's not on my globe. Arabian Sea is over here. The Red Sea over here. And the Mediterranean Sea. Qua vessels. And then they can have ally countries, Egypt perhaps, or Saudi Arabia. Trump had that thing with a sword, etc., some kind of deal. And they are also pressing for war, I think, and I've heard John Bolton and others even advocate the insane idea of a preemptive strike. But without an agreement with Russia, that would mean world war, and perhaps none without a Tesla plasma shield would survive in reality. I mean, how many people talk about this stuff, about scalar weapons? Some would talk about nukes perhaps, but scalar weapons, it's pretty unheard of in relation to possible world war, etc. In the news we certainly don't hear them. Well, we might hear them about nuclear, biological, chemical and directed energy weapons. So those are probably the 4 types of weapons that they have. And my total self-annihilation idea was, my example was with nuclear, with biological weapons. I mean, when 2 enemies and their ally countries have each have a biological weapon, and they both have the cure, but not for the weapon of the enemy, then they could totally annihilate themselves, the whole human race, perhaps all organisms in existence even. If they both don't have the cure for their enemy's weapon, so that's why it's vital to see where all the human race. But if it's true what Citizens Action Network on Facebook writes or shows us in their graphic, well, then it's also, it would be good to know what their source was for this information. And the question is it disinformation or is it good intel? So that's the stuff. So yeah, the Middle East, it's a big region, almost as big as Europe, I guess. Perhaps even bigger, landmass. Well, you also have Norway, Sweden. So leaders could also consider preparing for a world war and also especially minimizing the damages to themselves and the civilians in the world. Considering that might be their plan, and they can extort people with remote torture weapons, etc.
Did you notice I took my shirt off?
That's great, yes. I've noticed it. Could you go forward with your chair a little bit?
Yeah.
So yeah, the broadcast is already finished, but not really, so people can also Skype Prologic999 or write something in the live chat, though I'm not seeing that yet. Perhaps there's a way to add that web URL, and then I can show the live chat in the broadcast also. I think there may be an option in OBS to see the live chat. Settings, I'm going in settings now. So if the video hangs, then that could be the reason. Advanced. Hotkeys, video. Perhaps I need to use the pop out of the chat. But I've recently turned it on, and some broadcasts have 70 views. Don't know if those were live views as well. But after that, it didn't go up much. Tensions with Iran. Yes, it's normal. My father usually makes that sound when I'm scratching in. Moans of joy, of ecstasy. Show me what democracy sounds like. This is what democracy sounds like. So true democracy may be the best form of government. So power corrupts, that's one of the problems. And what would be a better alternative? Do you know any better form of government than true democracy?
No.
US is a plutocracy because running for president takes a lot of money. And there's also some female Hawaiian candidate. She's pretty good looking, but I think she may also have brains, and I'd have to check her if she'd legalize cannabis and stuff like that. Because it's illegal to block a working cure from the public. So you could argue there are illegal Rockefeller drug laws that cut the public off from that working cure. So cannabis should be legalized for all ages. Also cancer patients use it, and they can also eat it in the form of cannabonbons or space cake. So I'm a big proponent of legalizing it. And I claim the governments that haven't legalized it yet are criminal governments. Just for that reason, already the reason that it's illegal to block a working cure from the public. And cannabis kills tumors by blocking vascular endothelial growth factor, a protein needed by tumors to sprout. They can't sprout without VEGF. So it's a protein. So you could argue everybody should eat cannabis, and many people call it a miracle cure. But people who want to reduce the global population with chemical cancer-causing prescription drugs have made it illegal for people to grow these healing plants at home. And they've given themselves the right to import that cocaine under armed guard, etc. And heroin is another one of those plants recently in the news a lot because it gets people hooked, it gets them addicted to these chemical cancer-causing prescription drugs that are not the real thing, you could argue, but very close. So they are physically addictive, unlike cannabis. And many professionals don't even know that cannabis is not physically addictive, while the cancer-causing killer, alcohol, is physically addictive, and heroin as well, of course. The morphine-based, heroin derivative-based chemical cancer-causing prescription drugs are real. And then there are these drugs that turn people into serial killers, Zoloft and others. I'd have to Google that. Zoloft. So people can do self-hypnosis so they never kill themselves or the fellow humans if that's not required to protect themselves, so they don't end up in jail or on the death chair. And self-hypnosis can also be used to cure depression, and every person has their own program, so you can do self-hypnosis, like sleep, you are now under hypnosis. No one but me and you yourself can hypnotize you without your written permission. Your brain can only perceive thoughts generated by your brain itself, to exclude thoughts sent with synthetic telepathy. And you can always do self-hypnosis if you don't like this. Because of this hypnosis, you now have the ability you breathe regularly. Deep breathing is good to get more oxygen to your brain, to get better ideas. And you do stuff for universal peace. You do things making love, or do something nice for someone else, or actually make real plans. For example, protests, or they also control bodily functions with the scalar weapon, so that was the dirtiest. Well, perhaps I did it with my hand, with my arm like that. Okay, the window is open. So perhaps we'll soon see the results. So perhaps this was the peaceful way to do it that you were talking about. The effects are irreversible. What was I talking about? Scalar weapon or something?
Yeah.
I was first talking about legalizing cannabis, of course. And cannabis is legal in Uruguay, Canada, in South Africa, I think. Completely legalized. And well, I've more writings about this. I also did a broadcast about it, an ASMR broadcast. Close whispering male.
Producers of cannabis products
No, I'm trying.
registered on.
Yeah.
On the exchange.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
So you can trade them.
Hemp shoes can be nice also. Clothing of hemp, plastic of hemp, etc. And but I was wondering what I was talking about about before this. What I was talking about after talking about legalization of cannabis. So they erase memory selectively, and they control people in my environment as well. And they can use red herrings and people in your environment. And then there were these explosions outside, which was it sounded like a milk carton or something. And the passing of gas. But we're all still alive somehow. It was interesting, so perhaps I wanted to say more about it. I thought perhaps it was about scalar weapons or something. But probably not then. So you don't know, you don't remember what I was talking about either, I guess. If you know, then please Skype Prologic999, or cool. You could be live in the broadcast. But it has to be fast, otherwise I will be on my waterbed. But okay, then I could still answer the Skype call. So yeah, I could also do some broadcasts about foods. vegetarian and vegan foods, of course. I guess sausages and coconut ice cream and foods that I like personally. And also foods that I dislike, vegetarian foods I dislike also exist. But basically I think this is more important and I find it more interesting myself. I mean, everybody can Google baked Alaska or whatever. It's a great dessert. I also like baked bananas. And it's not peshmelba, but banana split, so just a cold banana with vanilla ice cream or some other ice cream that doesn't have dairy products in it. Decalcifying your pineal gland, it's all online. How to do this. Then it's better to think about safe countries basically, or what would be the safest place during a world war. Would it be at sea? I think of pirates basically. Well, I think one advantage of staying home is that you have the comforts of your own home and okay, if there's no shelter and it's near an airport or big city that will be moved, you could check it online also, and you could always move or take a temporary holiday to a country that's safe or where you have a place with a shelter. The only thing is you have to be below the blast wave, basically. These megaton bombs going off. So you would need to be in a cellar, for example. Anything that is below ground is below the blast wave, so people could just dig a ditch, basically a hole in the ground, and jump in that if necessary. You'd have to dig pretty fast though, but it's better than being blasted away, I guess. And these nukes have a certain range, so if you're just outside that range, then you could still be severely damaged by it and eventually die, but you might not be immediately dead. I mean, World War has to be prevented, and I think promoting universal peace, but also creating a universal world peace plan to unite all countries against any imperialistic country that would attempt to invade other countries is a good idea. I've already proposed this to Bush and Putin and others, and wrote a world peace agreement, and on universecreator.weebly.com people can read more about that. But the Jesuits are a military order, and religion is just part of their psychological warfare as part of real warfare. So it's a real war, not an info war, and they're pursuing a military state, not a police state. and also covered Rothschild's possible involvement in they are the bankers of the Vatican, of course. Some claim the world's only trillionaires, so rich that they're not even listed on the list of richest people in the world, the Forbes list. Bilderberg, Committee of 300, Trilateral Commission, etc. Situated in London. All right. So anything can happen because this is live. And apparently the live chat was off in my previous broadcasts. Now it should be on, and I changed it on the live dashboard, so it should be on from now on. And then perhaps if I can build up an audience, then we can also chat. Then I can see what the people really think. So yeah, I'm also manipulated by them with these directed energy torture weapons. And then there are their hybrid insects to watch out for. These high members of DARPA, remotely controlled insects, allegedly for surveillance purposes. But I don't buy that when they have through the wall radar and synthetic telepathy. So I do think it's a good question, why when they have all these scalar weapons, as explained in the 12 things you should know about scalar weapons by Christy Verismo article, why do they have drones and these high mems, etc. The T4 nanobot. I've read about the nanobot that it supposedly takes away people's instinct for self-preservation. And that's a real nanobot, so of all these other nanobots, we see these airbrushes and animations. Those are not real nanobots, like the T4. And then freelance Jim, what's his name? Anyway, freelance writer may have changed his original story as well on the T4. So, perhaps negligible senescence, control of all factors that control aging is achieved when they have mastered channeling the energy. Everything is energy, our bodies are energy, molecules forming DNA, etc. So when they can change things on a molecular level, then it may be possible to cure people of any disease, and to even rejuvenate people, to let them grow younger to the age they want to be. With the scalar technology, I think that's more likely than nanotechnology and chemical cancer causing prescription drugs and genetically modified organisms and organ transplants and such. And perhaps they already have it, so we just gotta stay alive until it's revealed unto us, perhaps. And the way that it's done might also be designed by a neural network. It might be capable of thinking about things that the human mind cannot conceive. Yet the human mind may also be capable of thinking about things that it cannot conceive of, depending on its programming, etc. It's a computer program. I'm gonna have to close my window, it's getting pretty cold now. It's 0:43, Saturday, 25th of May. The moon is about half full, waning. And then there's the problem that the Earth could spin off axis. The Earth is already wobbling. They've never set up that many nukes simultaneously in human history. But they are certain that they produce earthquakes as well. Flood waves, I think. Tidal waves. Perhaps one tidal wave can cancel the other one, and they set it up right at all. Well, it's better than one gigantic tidal wave that wipes us all out. So all speech errors are made by the neural network. It's done deliberately and strategically as part of their smear campaign to annihilate a billion people and impose their satanic Luciferian totalitarian global government. of this stuff is important, so I don't have time to always indicate if it's theory or conspiracy fact, or just a fact, or a half-truth, or what have you. And if everything can be Googled, so they can, well, some ideas may be my own ideas, so that's, and then it's possible others also had the idea before me. But most of the stuff I talk about is found online, and I usually mention the sources in my articles. It's 528 hertz. Stretching my legs. Yeah, we are all the human race, our common enemy is death. I think that's wisdom. And wisdom is not to fear a fictional entity. And apart from evil and do good is not waging wars by means of deception. Former Mossad slogan. And perhaps I can recall what I was thinking about. But perhaps I already covered it more or less, I don't know. I'd rather think of new ideas, basically, also for the broadcast. So it's really a pretty cold night.
Yeah.
Of course, because we've had a sunny day, with blue sky.
It was sunny, but not really warm.
Well, it was pretty warm, but
Well, in the sun, yes, but
my point is that there are no clouds, so that's why the heat dissipates.
yeah.
So that's how cancer chemtrails also contribute to man-made global warming, if that exists, überhaupt. And then of course the atmospheric heaters, geoengineering, climate engineering cannot be left out either when you're talking about the causes of man-made global warming. So like I said before in some other broadcasts, you first have to check if it's man-made global warming, because there are natural fluctuations. You have ice ages and warm periods. And the question is also, can we prevent another ice age, the next ice age? And then once you've established that, then you still have to check if humans can do anything about it when we are on a huge planet and Antarctica may be bigger than many people think. But I did do a broadcast about it, and we also have to watch out that we don't trigger a next ice age with the weather weapons. And it might not be as simple as if we make it colder than nature, we'll make it warmer, etc. Then they're modifying the jet stream, so who knows whether we're heading towards disaster and self-annihilation, or if we're on the right track towards a non-fictional utopian paradise, or will to come perfect society on Earth, which would theoretically evolve sooner or later, the evolution of humanity, technology, etc. But in all these articles, I don't think it's very clear what the function of these troops is going to be. And on the other hand, the number of troops isn't that high, but it's mainly defensive.
Well, could be that it's unclear because Trump or members of his group have not received information about this. They don't know themselves. So he's to decide to send 1,500 soldiers there, but that's all they've decided. And they have not decided on exactly where to send them and what are the tasks they should fulfill, and what way should they remove the military equipment that they work with, and many things like that.
Hmm. But perhaps Iran would not have the backing of Russia if they would block the Strait of Hormuz or do an attack on American vessel, or would Russia back that as well? I doubt that. But yeah, of course, when I think about having an agreement, then I leave out the idea, perhaps it's a fact even, that Jesuits control these intelligence agencies which are Masonic from behind the scenes, and that they form controlled position to themselves. Some people claim they're satanic homo paedo necro cannibals, and the remote torture I was subjected to makes clear that these people that did it to me are ultra sadists and they can't be enforcing the law. They can be okay. But of course these people might not be, well, it's the list of 7 suspects that I've covered in my previous broadcast as well. So I want to close my window, let's move on. Thank you very much for your wonderful scratchings.
All right. You too. So. Now we'll do some wonderful sleeping.
Yeah, pretty late today. Yesterday we were about 2 hours earlier. So perhaps tomorrow we could eat a little earlier every night until we eat before 7 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Perhaps 7 o'clock would be a nice time to aim for. Then I can be ready about 7 o'clock. So that we have time 6, 7 or 8 that we eat every day. What do you think about that?
I'm thinking, I'm looking at something I found on the ground here.
Okay. Oh, they're just
It's from Action.
What are those called? Those bills of cash register rolls? These BPA thermal printed bills? Is there another name for them? A receipt, of course. Called
It's a receipt. And you could also call it a cash register receipt.
Right. Cash register receipt. Alright. Well then I'm gonna close my window. And perhaps it's best if I just close this broadcast first now, because I'm gonna do some other things. And then I can see if I make another late night broadcast or watch a movie or do something else. So, people have to write, oh yeah, the hypnosis, I didn't finish the hypnosis yet. So you feel happier with every breath you take, you get better ideas, and you can make a super healing hypnosis, try giving yourself precognitive visions and things like that. So, you wake up, you snap out of the hypnosis, and safety first. It's just an example of hypnosis, you know. Now when you are above hypnosis, no one can hypnotize you without your written permission. So that's the first thing, the main thing to do. Also with self-hypnosis, when you're reprogramming yourself. And we are more than robots, we created robots, we are self-aware.
Okay, have a wonderful night.
All right. Let's turn it into an awesome night. Ik heb genoten van je gezelschap. Dankjewel. Ook voor de antwoorden op de vragen. Lukt het? Oké.